Give us some visual cue. Oh, wait, that's right. We're splicing and stuff.
All set.
Right. Yeah, no music, so we'll just start. Okay.
Salute.
All right, here we go.
Roger.
Welcome to Self-Destruct Sequence. I'm Zing.
I'm Ronkley.
And I'm Morphod.
Thanks for joining us. It's September 26th, and this is episode 3. Today we have a very special guest. We have a Lotharbot in the house. Lotharbot is one half of the core maintenance team for the retro port of Descent 1 and 2. You there, Lothar?
I think he's one half of the.
Yes, I am.
One half of the first Descent royal family.
So I don't actually do any maintenance on retro, but I do pass a lot of things on to my wife, who does absolutely all of the coding because she's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that is cool. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, or a little bit about both of you guys, if you want, how you got started in Descent?
All right.
Yeah, start with.
So,
from my understanding, it's supposed to be a real special story about how you two met. So start with yourself. Yeah, I want to hear about how you got into Descent, and then how you actually ran into Dracona. That's an absolute legacy.
all right. So I got into Descent. My dad has been a computer programmer since the 1970s. He worked on databases for the phone company and things like that. And so we always had computers in the house. And at one point, he bought a brand new Pentium 100 megahertz computer that came with a CD for Descent Destination Saturn, which was halfway. It's halfway between the Descent 1 shareware and the full version. It had about 15 levels. It had most of the weapons, most of the bosses, but didn't get you all the way to the Mega Missile guy. And that computer happened to get placed in my room because that was the room that had extra space on a desk for a computer. So I ended up playing Descent single player mostly for about 4 years. And then I got into college and I found out that another friend of mine who I met during orientation also played Descent, and he said, "You can play it on the internet." So I started looking online, and I found that people were playing on Kali, and I found websites that were devoted to Descent. I found Cool Bear's site. I found the Descent BB. And so how I met Dracona, well, I got onto the board, and there was a thread that was like, tell us about yourselves, just to tell us about your personal, what do you do, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm reading along in this thread. And at the time, I am studying math. I'm taking differential equations. I run the overhead projector at my church, things like that. And I read this post that says, I'm studying math, I'm taking differential equations, and I run the overhead projector at my church. And I just about lose it. And so I post in the thread, "You sound like a female version of me." And that apparently caught her attention a little bit. And so we
Amidst
ended up
all the other
talking a little
suitors?
bit. Well, oh, yeah, there were a lot of
It's
other...
Descent.
Obviously, my wife, Catherine is at this time a 16-year-old girl on Kali, which you can imagine means just the most absolutely horrid messages. She will tell you she had a very quick finger on the ignore button. She would just block people, couple people per day.
You have to.
Because people would just, they'd find out, oh, there's a girl who plays Descent, and then they'd be like, let me teach her my vocabulary. All those words that I know. And so she would block a lot of people, but she also had a lot of guys who were genuinely, pretty sweet, very respectful, but who were just interested. But that particular thing, that caught her attention a little bit. And then I looked at her Descent website, and she had instructions for making a Pyro GX in origami. And I said,
Wow.
I can figure this out. So I tried to fold one myself, and I got most of the way through it before I had to cave in and ask her for help on a particular step that was very, very difficult, and that she ended up adding several sets of details in terms of how to complete that particular step. And when I explained to her where I was at and how I was stuck, and then the next step was, you know, a series of very basic folds, and I didn't even know the terminology.
This is all
She said,
over
"Wait."
my head.
She said,
Well,
you got to step number, whatever it was, 26 without knowing what a mountain or a valley fold is. And I'm like, well, you have diagrams and I understand space. So she was really impressed by that. So we started hanging out more, eventually started sort of online dating, played some Descent games together. And from there, it just, you know, it escalated. I flew out for Christmas, met her parents, we got engaged. Her parents eventually acknowledged that we got engaged because, you know, internet relationship. Her grandparents were very, very accepting right away because they had actually courted through letters during the war.
Yep.
So they were some of the first people in the family who we thought, there's no way the grandparents will accept this, you know, internet fiance kind of thing. And they said, that is so sweet. And we have now been married for a little more than 13 years. We have a son named Michael, who's named after a Descent player.
Who, by the way, just completely demolished DJ CJR at the LAN.
Yes, our son Michael beat
This
DJ
occurred after I
CJR 20-0. We have screenshots.
so
playing
awesome, by the way.
blindfolded.
I
That
think
might
Michael
need
was
to
playing
be a
blindfolded.
necessary handicap. Yeah, was Michael playing blindfold? That may need to be a necessary handicap in the future.
Well, actually,
So funny.
he was playing with no sound and, you know, one hand tied behind his back.
Oh.
I'm certain that DJ felt very slighted at the entire experience.
Oh, certainly.
When did your son start playing Descent?
When he was
Two-
about,
two-
I don't know, 2,
Wow.
2.5.
Two parent dissenters. So how early can we get them teething on this?
Awesome.
Does he play with mouse?
He does. And one of the things that's really interesting, I will watch him fly in, say, level 2 of the single player. There's a spot where there's this vertical tunnel, and he'll fly up to it, he'll shoot the door open, and he sees, okay, this turns vertical. So he'll just put his nose down and fly straight down it. And then I'll watch other adults sometimes who are new to Descent who will be streaming their first playthrough. They'll get to that same tunnel, and like they have to fight. They don't want to put their nose down. They want to try and stay horizontal. So it's really interesting just seeing how Michael has this sort of spatial reasoning that other people don't.
That's very important in Descent too. You lose that spatial reasoning, it's very hard to play. And when I first switched to mouse, I had that problem. So it's a big thing in Descent.
Yeah, I played
Actually
some.
making it fluid.
I played some co-op D1 with my 9-year-old son, and it was amazing to me how quickly he picked up the 3D nature of it. He's a big Minecraft player, but really hasn't played a lot of or any. I mean, there really aren't that many other games like Descent. So he was doing better than I did, and as far as like not getting lost in these levels I hadn't played in 15 years. It's pretty impressive. Kids these days, man.
So you brought us up with how you met Dracona and how you got into the game. How did you get into like the competitive scene, or were you part of any very active clans at all? If I recall correctly, you're one of the legacy Untamed Force members. Is that correct?
Yeah. So once I finally actually got Kali, and got a DSL line at my house.
Ooh.
So
What
that
year
I
was
could
that?
actually go online. That was maybe 99.
Ooh.
So that I got, so I wasn't using up our second phone line because my dad wanted to use it for his dial-ins to BBSs and such. So once I got Kali and we got DSL, basically the first thing I did is I signed up for the Invitational Descent Ladder. And I played well enough to get on, but not well enough to win very many games in my first little while. I think I was 2 and about 30 in my first 32 games.
Sounds like me.
But I did something that you guys might recognize. Entropy does this right now. I would always ask people to play in their best levels. I would say, whatever it is that you're good at, that's what I want to play, so that I could see people at their best and learn as quickly as possible. And over the course of the next 6 months...
He never does that with me, but okay.
In any case, over the course of about 6 months, I got to where I was near the top of the lower tier on IDL. And I had people telling me, you could be maybe invited into the upper tier if only you played Descent 2. And at that point, Descent 2 was just a horrible game. It was so bad, it sucked. There was no D2X. The frame rates were all over the place. And it was just, flash missiles didn't light up everybody's screen the same way. Omega Cannon did more damage depending on frame rate. And I just said, I'm not interested in D2. I'll stay down here in the lower tier, thanks very much. And that, I think, really surprised people because a lot of people liked the prestige that came with being invited into that top tier of the ladder.
Do you recall when you were able to get a hold of your first Cross Minor? I believe was the #1 spot for lower tier. Was you were awarded a Cross Minor award?
It was pretty late. It was towards the end of the IDL era. Kind of over time, IDL had some issues with, there was somebody who cheated in the upper tier and he got kicked off, and then there were some issues with some upper tier pilots who had quit and then come back and were being punished by being held into the lower tier. So in about 2001, 2002, there was a lot of push by people towards playing in other places, culminating in Manson launching his own ladder, the UDL. But so the number of players started to dwindle pretty quickly, and then eventually I was able to pick up a Cross Minor from some of the guys who I was pretty evenly matched with. I don't even remember who specifically I played for it, but I know I took that top spot once we finally got Daz, Manson, and Kufyat back in the upper tier where they belonged, instead of sitting there taking up the top 3 spots. I mean, that's like, oh, you want top silver? You have to beat Jedi Luke, Mark 392, or, Bahamut to get the top silver spot. Like, no.
I'm pretty certain that Kufyat has like the number of times actually awarded UT from how many times he's inappropriately retired. He never hit the retire button. He always let the account expire. I think it was I remember one account was like Kufyat 8. It was pretty ridiculous.
Was all about he was one of those guys who just wanted to be a little bit of a rebel, and so he would quit when people would tell him not to, just to go against the grain, even though it would have been easy for him to just hit the retire button. He just didn't want to. He didn't want to play their game.
That'd be a really cool pilot to get a hold of for an interview. Yeah. If any of our listeners has had any contact with Kufyat, definitely send us a line. That'd be a very interesting interview if we could get a hold of him.
I could have sworn I've played an Anarchy game with him in like the past several months.
He was also one of the great LAN pilots. He'd show up at a LAN, wearing his sweatpants and his hair's all messy, and like he looks like he got out of bed and smoked a blunt and came to the LAN. Like he just looks like he's wasted. And he's
gonna have to come on now to
plugs
defend
in
himself.
his box, and he just kicks the crap out of everybody. And you're like, how did you do that? At that point, I remember he showed up at the LAN in Kansas City in, I want to say it was 99 or 2000. And at that time, Birdseye had this winning streak that had stretched for like 9 months. I mean, he had not lost a game of any sort. And Kufyat showed up at the LAN, sits down next to Birdseye, and just destroys him like 20-10.
Oh,
and
jeez.
gets up and goes out and has a beer, and that's just it. That's all he didn't like celebrate it. He just did it.
Oh man, it's amazing. I remember
That's so
seeing.
demoralizing.
Sounds like a guy who walks around with theme music.
Yeah, I remember seeing a comic that pretty much sums all that up. I wish I could find it, but it's funny as hell.
Was that
That comic was inspired by
Thrasher
me,
comics?
actually.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I told Thrasher about that idea, and he said, "Okay, I'll make a comic about that." And so he took it straight off of my report from that LAN.
That's great.
and so you have a long descent history. I think we just brushed on clans. Were you always just a UF guy once you started getting into clans?
Yeah, UF was a clan formed by Birdseye and Jedi Luke, I believe, were the two who set it up, and it was meant to be kind of the cream of the crop. And you had to play in, you had to be invited, and it was a lot of people who I was friends with. And Catherine actually got in first. And once she joined, I said, okay, I guess I have to join too. Where at the time we were engaged. And I said, okay, we have to be in the same clan. So we were basically like two of the three worst pilots in that clan at the time. We've gotten better since then, but we were definitely at the bottom of the barrel, which made us still better than most people in the other clans, because it was a pretty selective clan. So it was really a fun time.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. When I played Descent 3 after D1 quit working for me, I think when I got a computer that was running Windows Vista, then I ended up joining a D3 clan called RIP, and played with them, captured the flag for many, many years. I still hang out with them from time to time as well.
RIP was a tough clan to play back in the day.
They were a tough clan, and RIP still hosts the weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it is, the Capture the Flag events that Lady Silver has been organizing in Descent 3. It's on the RIP server that Foil runs out of his house.
Very cool.
Okay, so you told us a bit about your competitive experience, the clans that you've been part of, how you've been into the game. Goodness and golly, one thing I'm seeing here on our itinerary here is, do you have like a link to that pyro origami that you tried to get a hold of, tried to master in your unintentional courtship at the time of Dracona?
We definitely want to share that.
It was
you guys still have
definitely intentional on my part. I can look up.
To
I can see if
try
it's
to
on
build
the
that?
Wayback Machine.
Because I've tried to build
it
that
was
myself,
definitely
actually.
flirting,
Okay, all right. I was just trying to build it,
really-
and I don't think I got nearly as far as the way you described.
Man.
I eventually got to like a crumpled mass of paper that looked a lot better at the bottom of a wastebasket.
Yeah, I think we should get
We call
Dracona
that
to do a
an
time-lapse
origami
video
shield
of making that.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, that's origami shield orb. That's the model right there. You just take it and you crumple it.
I can do that
look at
real
all
easy.
those shields for my pyro to scoop up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask about how both of you, or I'm not sure, but who got into it first. The working on the code, working on did you start with D1X? Or kind of
Retro?
To be sure, Dracona's the one working on the code, right?
Right. She works on the code, and I mostly encourage her and cook food for her and things like that.
And you look at the code and can't distinguish it from Greek.
Well, I do have a computer science degree. I know some things about code, but it's a pretty big and pretty bad code base.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't really
is
understand
intimidating.
it well enough to work on it.
Yes,
The way she got into it, so she actually downloaded it the day it was open sourced. She set it downloading overnight, and she had it. She had a untouched, completely fresh copy of the original Descent 1 source code that she kept on her hard drive. I think she still has, saved somewhere. And back in that era, she did a little bit of work on it, but didn't really accomplish much. And we just played on D1X. And then in the intervening several years, she worked as a professional software engineer for the Boeing company. And she worked on flight simulator pilot training software, including combat simulators that had things like missiles and, radar tracking and things like that. And so when we came back in, I believe it was 2013, it might have been 2012, I think 2013, Jedi Luke sent an email and said, "Hey, old friends from my old clan, we are still playing Descent. You should come install it." And our first few games, we said, man, these homing missiles are just so wrong. They turn corners in ways they shouldn't. They don't behave properly. And so she started digging through the source code to figure out if she could resolve it, and discovered that the tracking algorithm had been completely changed. And she said, I can fix this. I can make it so that they track just like original homers at a fixed frame rate. I can write a simulator to demonstrate what it should do. I can fix it. So she wrote a little patch for D1 Rebirth and posted it on the Rebirth forum with mathematical proof of correctness, with a discussion, of exactly why homing missiles should behave the way that they do in D1 in the original code, what was wrong in the Rebirth code, et cetera, et cetera. And the response we got was basically, the response we got was basically, everybody's always complaining about homing missiles. Just,
oh, jeez.
We like,
Man.
they're okay. Stop worrying about them. And then, after really about a month of arguing that was very stressful for us, we finally said, well, we'll just release this patch kind of in the wild. And everybody played with it. Absolutely
right.
Everybody,
right.
except for the people who were stuck on Mac who couldn't play with it. Because we couldn't compile for Mac, and neither could the Rebirth guys at that time. The tool chain was just broken.
Okay.
And then over time, the last 3 or 4 people who were still playing on Mac, like Pygmy and Loney, actually either, went over to a friend's house to play, or installed like Windows on their Mac, or installed Wine or whatever sort of emulator, and played with the fixed homing missiles. And they said, wow, I can't go back. And then over time, we just, there were more problems that people would say, here's the problem, can we fix it? And we said, sure, let's write a patch. And, we'd kick out a patch about, 2 days later that would fix the issue. And over time, we just got to be farther and farther away from what Rebirth was doing, to the point where really it became a separate project instead of just a series of patches. It became its own thing.
Right.
All right. I guess then that kind of leads into the next series of questions, which has been how has this experience with working with Retro fed into, if I recall correctly, you're like on the secret inner circle of people who have donated an extraordinary amount of money to the Descent Underground project.
Well, so
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just queuing for the audience that you and Dracona had recently gotten together for with the Descent Underground crew to nail down the physics of the original Descent to create as a model for the Descent Underground to use on their other ships. And that had to be a huge undertaking with the short amount of time that you had available to work with it. How did your retro experience fill in, and how did your I'm interested in how your mathematical experience may have fed into your ability to help the Descent Underground team make the game that we all really hope it can be.
Well, so we had a week that we spent in Austin working with the team, and we had basically 3 things that we wanted to accomplish that week. We wanted to make sure that the ship flew right, get that physics nailed down. We wanted to make sure that we had sort of a good sense between the team and us of what sort of sizes we should use in levels in relation to the ships, in relation to the weapon speeds, things like that. And then we wanted to actually put together a level for them. And that first issue of nailing down the ship physics, we sat down with the code that they had given us the first day and started playing it and started, sitting there with a stopwatch flying around in D1 and then flying around in their engine. And we just couldn't get the values tweaked to match up. So Catherine said, you know what, let's get cleaner details by actually outputting data straight from Descent 1 that shows us, how far the ship has moved at each frame. And let's see if we can fit a curve to that and see how it's behaving, and then translate that into the DU, into the UE4 engine. So she just printed out some data straight out of Descent 1. We said, oh, okay, this acceleration isn't linear. It's got this drag factor. And then that's where the math background came in, because UE4 didn't have a drag factor that was acting in the same way. It had a counter thrust model. And so at one point we had these equations written on the board for drag and equations for counter thrust, and we're sort of reorganizing.
How do I make this thing fly around like it's a heavy boat?
Right. How do I make it fly around like it has drag when what we have is basically reverse thrust, or a reduction of our acceleration thrust? And I realized
a lot more complicated than what I understood when in your original posting on that. I didn't realize that you were trying to model it with limited structure.
It turns out that it was the same equation, basically, with just one parameter that was written in a different way. So we had to just translate, drag was based on velocity. And so we had to say, okay, this counter thrust factor also needs to be based on velocity. And so we came up with an equation that was very simple, very straightforward. And then Jason, Stormwind, took about a day and a half to actually get it implemented in their particular code base. And then once it was in, we were able to take the physics values that we had, and the ship just flew almost flawlessly first time with those new values.
Cool.
And so the different ships in the game do fly differently. Is that right?
They do. They all use the same underlying physics, but they all have different mass and thrust and acceleration type values, so that some of them fly a little bit slower. The Wasp, for example, its slides are actually a little bit slower than its forward and reverse acceleration.
If I go ahead.
I was going to say, is there a base? There's one that is as close as possible to the original. There is one ship like that.
It's like the Torch or something, right?
The goal is to make the Torch as close as possible to the original. Now, the Torch is only available to people who back before it's unlocked, and then it will go to every game package that has already been unlocked at that point, or already been purchased at that point. And then there will be a second ship that they're currently calling the Inferno that will have the same flight characteristics, but it just won't look maybe quite the same.
Won't look as cool.
Won't look as cool, right? The Torch is modeled after the Pyro a little bit in terms of its looks, in terms of its style.
As far as the IP can get away with.
Right, exactly. Derivative works are okay, but copying it directly is not. So it's similar, but it's not exactly the same.
I believe that there was still a bit of a question mark regarding the rotational physics and mass of movement regarding how the ship is supposed to move in Descent 1. And that was left not entirely complete. Have you had any thoughts or input on that matter since that time that you spent in Austin?
Well, that's just a matter of we have to get back into the code and reevaluate the process we used to translate the data we had into the equations. I think what happened is the rotational code in Descent 1, frame to frame to frame, you don't get really precise data. So you have to add up several frames worth of data, and that introduces a little bit of a delay in terms of the way you're trying to model, okay, how much rotational acceleration are you getting? Well, if you need 5 frames of data, you're already delayed by 25 milliseconds in terms of your equation. So we need to go back and basically time shift the equation that we used for the rotational velocity so that it's matching up with the actual inputs instead of a slightly time delayed pyro.
And based on your experience from actually flying the best fit model that you were able to create in your time there, do you feel that the rotational inconsistencies between the new descent and the old descent are a significantly detracting factor, or just something that people will generally adapt to, not entirely unlike Descent 3?
Well, the plan is to fix it, first of all.
Okay.
But second of all, it's not so far off that it feels like, Forsaken or something. It feels pretty Descent-like. It's just a little bit sluggish, and it's something that other people who don't really know the intricacies of the code have also talked about, that it just doesn't quite turn the way they're expecting. But we could fix it. It's just we need to get into D1, get that data out, revise the equations, send those in. And the DU team has been very responsive when we've given them that sort of information. They've usually taken it and translated it right away.
Cool. Well, thank you for answering my curiosities there. Do you guys have any other questions?
When do we get the goods?
Hopefully in the next week or so.
Nice.
That's been talked about a little bit in the live stream, that those who are in the underground will get the build basically as soon as matchmaking is working and they work out a couple of bugs that are just making it very difficult to play right now.
Right.
But they've made some huge progress in the last week. We played on Wednesday and it sucked because of some server issues in the UE4 engine, and we played on Friday and it was awesome. So we're really at a good spot, and it's time to start bringing other people in as soon as we can.
That's really good.
Do you know if they what their plan is for servers? Are they going to release the server code, or is it part of the game? Or are they going to run all the servers?
That's kind of in the future. Right now, they're going to run all the servers. There won't be a direct LAN mode. The hope is that by release, you can play on LAN, and there might be a LAN server released at that point. In terms of running your own online server, that's a little bit more work for them in terms of how that integrates with their global stats, in terms of how that integrates with their unlock systems, with their skin systems, with clan systems, with banning people who are cheating, things like that. So that's going to be more work, but eventually that's planned to be in as well.
Very nice.
Okay, makes sense.
All right.
You have anything else? I think we're kind of at the end of our questions. If you have anything else that you'd like to add, we didn't cover.
Descent is awesome. Yay, Descent.
All right.
Yeah, and thanks for all your hard work, and Dracona as well, of course. I don't think the game would be where it is today if it weren't for the dedication of open source folks. It definitely wouldn't be. It wouldn't be anywhere. It wouldn't be. I mean, I don't think we wouldn't even have a new game, I don't think, without the open source folks putting in so much time to keep things going.
Or at least not a new game that would be worth playing. You guys have definitely put yourselves out there as when I started this, I called you guys like the first royal family of Descent. Well, yeah, that's because you guys care so much about the game, and you guys put so much into it, and I think on behalf of the community, I think we all appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And, as long as we're talking about the open source community, let's remember the work that Zico and his team have done. And before that, Sekmu with D1X. There have been a lot of people who've contributed to making Descent functional in the modern era. Right now, it's, Dracona's kind of at the forefront of that, but she's not the only person who's worked on it. And so we need to keep in mind everything that everybody has done over the last 20 years of Descent history.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Stand on the shoulders of giants.
I was going to say that, and you beat me to it.
Oh, wow. That's... Great minds hate alike.
Future guests. There's lots of future guests that we'll have talk to some other developers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be neat to try to find Sekmu if he's around. If you have run into this legendary fellow, definitely drop us a message.
Right? Very cool.
Thanks a lot, Lothar, for your time, and we will definitely have you on in the future, and Dracona as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Salute.
Ready.
What else do we got here today?
Well, we can go over a bit about the Descent Underground news from the last several weeks. In episode 27, which that was last Friday, they actually talked to our very own Ronk. We had a short, nice interview segment on the episode.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
talk a bit about that.
Got to talk
Did you
with...
wear a pretty suit?
No, but I did wear my Descent shirt. And I just got the Descent Underground shirt a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, I got to talk with Mike Moreland, Viewmaster, for a few minutes. It was really fast, and it was really funny because he started the interview off. He's like, I'm here with Ron Klee. How you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing good. How about yourself? And he stops the interview right there. And he's like, we're talking about you, not me. So we kind of had a good laugh at that and just kept going. So it was fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else happened last week. I think I can talk about this week's episode. I think in each episode they have been saying, we had just talked to Lothar about, like, when is the build coming out to all the backers. It's been, I think, within the next week. It's kind of been the next. I guess they have the same problem that I have as far as committing to time schedules. So
we won't go there.
I think we all definitely want.
They're being paid money.
Yeah, if it's a matchmaking thing, we don't want to all get the game and not be able to play with anyone because the networking or matchmaking is broken.
Right. The main concern with the delays, of course, is them running out of said money, which we don't want to have happen. So hopefully they can get these issues resolved sooner rather than later. Get this out to the playing, the undergrounds.
If you want to see Descent, we will hold your wife and children hostage.
Wait, one of his children is
Until
working
you give
on
us.
it. We can't do that. He's got to work on it.
Okay, I'll get back to you.
I know last episode we mentioned capture the core, and I think or at least I thought that meant it was kind of like a capture the flag mode. In this most recent video they put out, they showed it's more like a King of the Hill or domination style mode where you kind of go up and I think you try to mine the core.
Sounds a lot like Onslaught from Unreal Tournament.
That's a good.
Yeah,
good
where you
one.
had, the base had the core, and you had to attack the core for so much in order to win. But in order to get to the core, you had to control so many control points to get access to attacking the core.
That was one of my favorite UT games too.
Oh, we
that
loved
was a
it
really
on
fun
LAN.
mode. Yeah,
that was fantastic. Shame I didn't see more of it. And maybe these guys are bringing it back.
I don't know if they had
interesting to play in 3D.
Yeah, did they have a control points type of thing, or was it just the core at the center? I'm not sure if they showed how that works.
Well, they definitely suggested that the core would change color, which means that it must be influenced by the team that has control of it. And maybe that's the intermediary cores before you get to the final one. I'm not certain. Maybe it is like a capture the flag arrangement, only there's multiple cores to be had, and you have, or maybe it's a stationary flag, for lack of a better term. You control the capture point, and you gain total match points based on how long you control those intermediary points.
It'd be definitely interesting to see how they implement this. I think a mode like this is going to be best experienced played.
Yeah, it definitely appeals to someone like me who's a enthusiastic camper, a spawn camper. So if I've got a single point which I got to defend, I'll just lay down purple all day. That's the type of game mode that I would be interested in. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of team play. Some of my best times in other games have been, Team Fortress, team games of UT. So lots of opportunities for good teamwork.
It's kind of interesting because I ended up retiring from Descent 3 based on my experience with team play. It just got too... I don't want to say it was pressure, but it was just too stressful and tiring to just keep doing. And the way that I'm playing these days, just, obviously on the DCL, just a single pilot playing around, it's a lot more fun and a lot less arguing, to say the least.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, this community does skew more towards the one-on-one type of gameplay and not necessarily teamwork.
Well,
so
Descent 3, the teams league was huge. I mean, there were in the tournament alone, there were 16 teams, and that was maybe only half the teams on the D3TL. But like you said, in D1, D2, that wasn't the case. You had the Invitational Descent Ladder, UDL, DCL, obviously. I don't remember there being any type of league for clans.
No, I don't think so. And yeah, I didn't play enough D3 to even be aware of that. You did talk about that team league on your interview, I think.
Yeah.
The team play arrangement would typically take place during the clan battles that took place, and that's the thing you don't really see so much anymore because we have actual professional, semi-professional, or even just well-organized amateur leagues anymore where there's set up arrangements. But now but back then we had clan battles where Clan A would fight Clan B, and we would do team tournaments, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, that sort of thing.
And I think another contributing factor to that was Descent 3 was, it seemed to be more made for team games. You had not just Team Anarchy, but you had the capture the flag built into it. You had entropy. You had people in like invent game modes, like Guardian, for instance. I believe Syrian was behind that one. They even revamped the Team Anarchy to play like D1, D2, where there was friendly fire. Stuff like that. So, I mean, it just seemed more made for team play than Descent 1, Descent 2 is. I mean, even today, I find team play in D1, D2 to be more of a novelty than something that you can really take seriously.
And a final tedious question for you. We've seen a lot of team play games come through in the rest of the FPS genre and leaking into others. It seems as if creating specialized roles allows for a made a game to develop much more readily. An example, I play competitive Team Fortress 2, where the classes are radically different from each other. Do you think that we have this kind of opportunity in Descent Underground to foster that kind of game mode on the competitive and casual level?
I would say that happened in D3. You had the 4 different ship types, and in Capture the Flag, which ship ran the flag in CTF? The Phoenix, because it was the fastest ship. And
it was a scout.
Pretty much. Mm-hmm. And then which ship would you use to defend? You'd use the Magnum because it's a big
fat guy, the heavy.
You can't go through that wields the trifusion that just rips everyone apart. So we've seen it happen in D3, and now they're adding 9 ships into Descent Underground. I think, without question, that we'll see a meta game develop in DU.
When you have that many classes, you got too many minds now that are looking at other similar games. They're going to look at that. What I'm really hoping is that the Descent Underground gets enough exposure. Is it because we're adding an entirely different axis to play with? Okay, that's 6 degrees of freedom. You're not playing a ground pounder anymore. You're not relying on your rocket hopping sons of kangaroos to jump around all the place. No, everybody can do that. Now you have a whole different world open up, and especially something that's not in other games is the speed of rotation. is limited in Descent. You can only turn so fast. You can't spin on a dime. You have to be careful about how you're placing yourself.
Yep, that's one of the big things.
No 360, no scopes, unfortunately.
Yeah, when they added mouse look to D3, that was like instantly shut off by the community. Nobody played mouse look.
There's certainly a lot to think about with the new game modes, the new ship modes coming in, and all of the different strategic and tactical possibilities that come about with them. Yep. Was there anything else that we were able to glean from the Descent Underground teasers that they offered us in the last couple of weeks?
I didn't see a whole lot more to add to that.
Yeah, they've just been showing off a lot of the gameplay, it's looking really exciting.
A little, still, I think we mentioned this before, a little disappointed in how that fusion cannon looks.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. It came out a little flat.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what they say on that.
Yes.
I mean, like, I think the fusion cannon that I have as a sticker on my laptop right now looks pretty sharp.
Oh, yeah.
But that other thing looked like, I don't know, a piece of slag rock that just got some purple stapled to it.
Well, this is a prequel to the to D1, so maybe the fusion cannons in this game are just a shadow of what they will become, and no one will use them. Maybe that's what will happen.
Go burn in a fire. Go away. Go away. I don't even want to imagine a Descent without fusion.
Soak yourself in a fusion bath, please.
I'm pretty certain that fusion is the damn it weapon of the Descent universe. We couldn't figure out any other way to shoot at this guy with enough punch to get him to pay attention, so we just wired the thing into the ship's reactor, made it overcharge, made the shields damage themselves, just slung a whole wad of hot molten plasma at the guy.
Yep.
That sounds like a good idea.
Sounds great to me. All right.
I have no doubt that their fusion will live up.
They know that
they will have a
so
revolt.
Many people if they didn't have a good fusion. So help me if it's nerfed like Descent 2 fusion. I will stand on my head, spin around in a circle, and whistle Dixie.
Right.
Wait, what happened with Descent 2 fusion?
It's half damage.
Descent 2 fusion has half the damage.
Wow. Shows what I know. I don't really. I was never a big fusion.
1/2. There you go. Okay. I think that's not what we want to see.
Okay. No.
Yeah. Very nice.
But yeah, it's Descent 2 only does half the damage that Descent 1 does, unless of course you're AOD high and you're playing with an obscure version of Descent 1, in which case in Descent 1 you only get 30 damage, 15 damage per bolt.
No. It's supposed to be 30.
But I digress.
Yes. All right.
All right. So I hear you have an update on your cobbled together joystick adapter.
Oh yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, you remember that thing that got smashed by the some mysterious forces?
You mean the idiot who left a box on the top of his car and then drove off?
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! No. It's as it turns out that you can order these parts online and build a Grendel adapter for your Microsoft SignWide or 3D Pro, but something strange has happened in the couple months between my first build, which rest in pieces, and the second build. Here is an example of the completed version.
Oh, very nice.
As you can see, it is very much. Yeah. Well, I decided that it didn't need to be the full length of my my school. My electrical engineering breadboard for class, so I bought a compact one. That's a 400-pin breadboard that it fits on, that Grendel had designed it for. However, important thing here from Winford Engineering is where this this GamePort adapter to GamePort to breadboard adapter comes from. I received the revision B upon ordering, and that actually has an extra pin, which requires a little bit of reconfiguration, but rest assured, if you just use some common sense, you will still be able to fit that in a 400 channel pin, whatever, breadboard, and fit it into this compact model. Now, I'm really kind of kicking around the idea of getting together some of the prototyping boards and doing some soldering. But of course, with the blisters on my left hand, I probably should stay away from very hot instruments for a little time yet.
We'll get to
But
that
it
in
would
a
be
bit.
nice to try to get this into a compact package, if only just to offer to the people who are interested in coming back, but you want to have your favorite joystick to work with. But yeah, that's the latest on my Grendel adapter adventures. This one definitely has a lot less signal noise, probably because prototyping boards have a bit of are a bit noisy as it is, and having the more compact model works toward a degree of signal integrity there.
So
But otherwise, we're working great.
what happens with the noise there? What kind of issues do you have?
The signal noise doesn't really interfere with the game so much. However, it can. I imagine that if it were any greater, I would start having some problems. It's very noticeable when I'm in the configuration screen, and perhaps I can show that in a future episode. But even though Descent itself detects the signal from the joystick as 30%, 40% turn rate or whatever. Whenever I'm configuring it in Windows, it's jumping all over the place, and that can seem kind of intimidating. And I imagine that if it were just an edge worse, then it wouldn't play nearly as smoothly as I remember. Once I'm in game, though, regardless of the jitteriness that I see in the Windows calibration setup, it works just fine.
Pretty good.
And that's all I really have to share on the Grendel adapter. We've got a new one. It's working great. And gosh and golly, if only once my fingers heal, I look forward to kicking people's butts in the fall season on the DCL. And if you have any questions that are not answered by Grendel's very detailed post on the descentbb.net website, then I would be happy to answer them if you just toss us a line here.
Yeah, we'll include a link. We'll include a link to that in our show.
I think we've had a link every single week, but we'll continue to add it.
Absolutely. All right.
You want to give us an update on DCL and the Rangers?
Yeah, sure. We'll start with the Rangers. Sirius just recently announced that the next co-op night is going to be October 17th. Actually, I think he does it during the day, now that I think about it. It's like 1 p.m. Eastern or something like that. But he hasn't posted the schedule yet, but that will be the next night for it. Aside from that, I haven't heard a whole lot. Who's Guy D was doing a event every other week, and I haven't seen anything come from that for the last few weeks. Hopefully that'll get continued. There's been moderate activity on it. Darkman and Tigeron have been playing the heck out of each other, which is kind of funny. But there's like 4 people that have or 3 people that have a full ace rating right now. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if there's like any way we could get all these people together and play each other to see who's the king of the Rangers for this season, because I'm pretty sure the season's winding up pretty soon. I don't remember exactly when it is. It looks like it ends. Yeah, it ends next month, October 31st. So
you need some kind of playoff structure.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the Descent Rangers though is that their season standings it's not competitive. It's not like you need to have someone on top, but it's always fun when you have people that are at 100% and then you put them against each other, because that means only one person is going to be at 100%. So aside from that, let's go over to the DCL real quick. We were going to have a Mark 392 versus Jedi Luke match last week, but unfortunately due to circumstances that was delayed. Mark, our thoughts are with you, buddy. Yeah. Hope things get smoothed out pretty soon, and hopefully that game will get played soon. Until then, Mark remains the top gold. In silver, we've had a few retirements. Rethink actually dropped from gold to silver, and I guess he just decided that he's just going to take a break for a bit. Our buddy Multi Mayhem decided to play Jedi Luke for 4 games and managed a total of 13 points, which is more than I'd manage on him, by the way. And he ended up retiring. Then we have this injury retirement. What's this about, Morfod?
Am I cutting out for people?
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah. I may or may not have burned my hand on a barbecue past weekend.
You should blame it on your soldering iron, although I don't think you need any soldering.
No. It's healing very well after what happened was I played Sunday night after the injury.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're familiar with burn injuries, they really take about 24 hours to fully develop.
Yes.
And because of the beating that I had put on them trying to put Mo in his miserable place in take 2, which of course is my baby, and he did beat me. The resultant I wound up really stressing the skin, and within the next day, all of the blisters ruptured on my hand. From picking up this hot barbecue grate, which, by the way, aluminum cools at a much faster rate than stainless steel. Please remember that when you're working with cooking devices, and especially in a hurry. So I had cortisone injected into these, and they're feeling a lot better, and may or may not have acquired some Novocaine to help with it. And I'm feeling a lot better with things, and they're definitely healing very quickly. And maybe I just have a mutation or sort, but it definitely looks like a second-degree burn weld across 2 of the fingers, especially on the index finger. It's not on the fingertip, but pretty close, and is enough to really be uncomfortable during the first half of the week while I was playing. I'm expecting to be out for the next couple of weeks until this heals well enough to play, because while the pain is not there anymore, I don't want to exacerbate it any further, and infection really is a concern.
Yeah,
and so we're just going to take it easy, maybe play a couple mouse games. I don't know, it's just something a little more relaxed.
This is why I
definitely yeah, but the food was so good, Ronclay.
I bet it was.
But yeah, that's why I'm out for a little bit.
Yep. Continuing with the silver news, and unfortunately, yeah, I'm kind of glad this didn't come up in the interview. Lothar Bot is currently top silver, and that happened after a 20-6 loss last night in a, I want to say, not very commonly played level. I think it was like the Duelists. So I've not even heard of that one. This is in D2 as well. So. But hopefully he'll get back to gold soon, because he's not that. He shouldn't be silver, I don't think. But
get out of my bracket.
Right. Well, you're going to have to do something about that if you want to get him out of your bracket.
I'm doing something about it right now.
Uh-oh. Okay, so bronze activity has been through the roof the last few weeks. But one of the things that have remained consistent in that bracket is Watts. Watts has not lost in the bronze tier since September 11th, which is about 2 weeks. That's 12 pilots consecutively defeated in the bronze tier. Congrats to him. Hopefully he can keep that going for the end of the season. I'm going to try to put a stop to that. We'll see. But like I said, there's been activity all over the place. We've had P-Funk, we've had Lady Silver, myself, a new gentleman by the name of Avatar, whole bunch of people starting to come up the ranks in bronze, and I think this can only end in having somebody in silver before we're out here. So, and I'm going to go right into the highlight of the week, because despite Lothar Bot not having a good game against Dracona, he had an exceptional game against Mo. Mo just came back on the DCL after retiring for a couple weeks. He made gold and got subsequently beat pretty badly, and he challenged Lothar Bot to his game, and oh my god, they put up a barn burner. The final score, this is in Lurk, this is in a this is in a level that's very near and dear to Lothar. Lothar beat him, but the score was 25-23. That is one hell of an overtime game right there. One of the things that I really want to point out is Lothar had a 4-point lead at this game. It was like 13-9. He carried that lead up to 17-13, and it was amusing because Mo at that point said something along the lines, "You need to catch those smarts that you're throwing in your face." Lothar replies back, "Aim better." And this just flicked a switch in Mo. Mo, I mean, if you watch the replay is from Lothar's point of view. Mo just went into beast mode, absolute beast mode, and ripped off 4 consecutive kills to tie it back up at 17-17. He kind of settled down after that, and Lothar regained the upper hand a bit. He had a 19-18 lead, and then they killed each other to go into overtime 2019. Lothar kept it into 21-20. I think that, if I remember right, Mo brought it back to 22-21. But, I mean, it just kept going. And all of a sudden, the kills start coming fast and furious. And I think that really favored Lothar. And he did end up getting away with... I mean, he squeaked out the win. He had 5 shields left when it was over. Also of note in that game, there was what we're calling a Jinx double kill. Where it was 5-5. Lothar kills him. And it's 6-5. Mo respawns in the middle of a smart missile. And it's 7-5. So, yeah. So, yeah, that was a fantastic game. You can see it up over at the Descent Champions ladder. We will post a link to that. Highly recommend taking a look at this. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that my matches that I had put in were not able to make highlight of the week. But then when you have 2 gold pilots go 25-23, especially a newcomer into gold, Mo told me afterward that he should have won the match. And you know what? You're not a gold pilot if you don't think about that every single game you play against a gold pilot, any pilot for that matter. If you don't think that you should have won, you shouldn't be in gold.
Yeah, pretty much. I think he deserves it, for sure.
Alrighty. In just kind of some tertiary news here. I guess this is a spontaneous event that occurred in the last couple of days. A future pilot has come back to the community, and we're really happy to have him back. He is a significant contributor to the code base for Rebirth, and has put in quite a bit of work in non-linear joystick movement and fixing the joystick turning rate frame rate bug. I guess whenever there's a dip in the frame rate while you're turning with a joystick, it will actually alter how it is your input is interpreted to the game, and you will start turning slower, which is significant to those of us who work on less than optimal equipment. Anyway, I guess he had been putting some investigation into bounty mode, wherein it's a standard Anarchy game, except the person is tagged as it, or they're looking to like evolve this into kind of like a juggernaut method, but they're just trying to figure out a way to balance it. Maybe it might be like hyper anarchy from D3, where one person is the target, and as it's developed right now, the target is the only person who can earn points, and everybody else is trying to kill the target in hopes of earning target status in order to gain points for themselves. However, as it is structured right now, it is absolutely an unbalanced game and requires a lot more investigation. I will say, however, that we played through the full 4-level set of mains the other day, and it was quite a bit of fun. Definitely requires a lot more work on that, but keep an eye out if you're flying around in Rebirth or Retro. We got some interesting new game modes to try out. Maybe this is something that the Rangers might be able to work into their repertoire. This is definitely a game mode type that would play very well into their structure, their community that they've built.
Yeah.
But yeah, bounty mode. Hopefully new and good things will come of that.
Yeah. Also, to build on last week's talk about Robo-Anarchy, apparently there's been some development of the source code. Dracona worked on an iteration that improved Robo-Anarchy a bit, and they were testing that out, so maybe we'll see some changes to Robo-Anarchy in the near future. Because, I mean, Andy, you remember how awful our experience was with the Robo-Anarchy that's out now.
Yeah, I think they were just going to have some respawning robots.
Yep.
That was
and make killing the robots mean something. as opposed to just, you kill the robots, whatever, they're out of the way.
The robots should drop weapons. Maybe that would be that give you points. But because we did have a lack of weapons.
We did have that because
severe.
there's a big fusion Hulk in the circular room, and if you killed it, it dropped a fusion cannon, which was nice.
Okay.
Especially for me.
I keep coming back to from TF2. There was a mod called Versus Saxton Hale, which was essentially a Juggernaut mode where one person was an overpowered character and everybody else had friendly fire, but their objective was to tear that guy down. I would be very interested in seeing a mode like that, but I have no idea how to implement that creatively within the confines of Descent 1 or 2.
Right.
I'm thinking, it would be ridiculous. No, maybe it wouldn't be quite so ridiculous to have them with a dual mega missile launcher that recharges every 10 seconds. But who knows? Who knows? AFP is certainly a significant contributor to bounty mode and other modes for Robo Anarchy. That's Dracona that's been working on that leg, or has it been another crew? But I'm very interested to see new, interesting, engaging, challenging, and yet still casual modes of Descent coming out for the classic Descent available in Rebirth and Retro mods.
Awesome. And then just another note on another game here, 6 Degree of Freedom game, Sublevel 0. We've mentioned this in the past. We have a firm release date on that now. That will be October 8th, available on Steam.
Yeah, that looks like a really good game.
Maybe we'll have to spend one of the future episodes taking a little bit closer look at that. I know we mentioned it in detail before, but maybe we can provide a couple of YouTube links there to see what's actually going on with Sublevel 0.
Yeah. At some point, I plan on going over all the major 6 Degree of Freedom releases from like the last 5 years and doing a blog or video series on them. I'm probably not going to be able to do that soon because I'm just starting the process of moving to San Francisco. So we should hopefully be seeing that like around December.
Well, if shoulds and coulds were nuts and candy, this place would be Christmas.
Don't commit to time frames there. Yeah. That's my advice.
All right.
So I think we've kind of gone over everything. Bring this podcast to a close. It's going to be a long one here, but that's not too bad. So make sure to check out our website, selfdestructsequence.org. Check us out on Facebook at SDS Podcast, on Twitter at SDS_activated, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a nice rating and review on iTunes if you can. Be very helpful.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear how much about you and what you would like to tell us about yourself and how much we can share about you. In other words, send us your submissions here at emails at selfdestructsequence.org and tell us whether or not you want to remain anonymous. Maybe you want to flame a member of the community and we'll, ignore you. But hey, if you have some controversial information that you'd like to share with us, we'll be happy to keep you anonymous or give you credit for the brilliant idea that you come up with. Regardless, send us stuff. Maybe you might send an email to our good friend Jimmy Russell's, who's been lurking around in the background here. I think he may show up for the next episode. Maybe you might tell him some of the things that, kind of charge you fusion regarding Descent or what's going to be upcoming. But yeah, emails at selfdestructsequence.org. And I think we have some other contact info here. We got our Facebook, we got a Twitch and Twitter that were previously mentioned. That's Twitch SDS podcast. SDS podcast for Twitch. For Twitter, it is SDS_activated. And as always, you can find all of our contact information available at selfdestructsequence.org.
And then, of course, if you're looking to get back in the game, I need people that are around my skill level. So please join. You can find out how to get retro at descentchampions.org/new_player.php. As always, we'll put these links up on our website and also on our Facebook page as well.
Thanks a lot, guys. And thank you again to Lothar Bot for coming on for a great interview.
Thank you so much.
And we expect to have some more exciting interviews in the future. And we'll see you guys next time.
Self-destruct sequence out.